This holiday dessert is a newer cousin to a traditional English favorite. Filled with fruit and a little bit of spirits, this cake is a seasonal staple on tables throughout the Caribbean. It has now made its way across the world as people traveled for work and play. We're exploring the history and origins of Jamaican Black Cake. I'm your host, Glenn Warren, and welcome to another serving of Seasons Eatings, the podcast which explores the history and origins of your favorite Christmas foods. Seasons Eatings can be found wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Seasons Eatings is also found on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. If you love the show, then I humbly ask you to share this podcast with someone you think would love to hear more about the history of Christmas and the foods which shape the holiday we love so much. And if you want to give me suggestions for future episodes, just email me at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com. All the links can be found in the show notes at seasonseatingspodcast.com. When it comes to holiday desserts, it doesn't get much more controversial than fruitcake. Often dismissed because of its dry texture and garish chunks of red and green fruit, it's easy to brush off the sweet as a relic of the past. That is, unless you've tried black cake, a confection hailing from the Caribbean that takes its notes from fruitcake and plum puddings, but offers a moister, denser, smoother alternative. Made with liquor-soaked dried fruits, blended into a smooth batter along with a mix of earthy spices and burnt sugar that gives the cake its signature dark hue, black cake is a labor of love. Jamaican Black Cake is a culinary masterpiece that fuses tradition, history, and rich flavors. A symbol of joy and togetherness, this dessert is a vibrant and delectable part of Caribbean culture. A tropical cousin to the traditional fruitcake, this cake is rooted in a fascinating blend of colonial influences, making it a staple in Jamaican weddings, holidays, and other special occasions. The rich molasses spice cake, filled with drunken dried fruits, is part of the Christmas festivities throughout the Caribbean. The cake likely evolved from holiday plum pudding recipes British colonizers brought to the West Indies in the 18th century. Islanders modified these recipes, incorporating local ingredients and liquors. With time, the black cake became a staple on Caribbean Christmas dinner tables, alongside a roasted ham, a jug of sorrel, which is hibiscus tea seasoned with spices, pastelas, and rice. The origins of Jamaican Black Cake, sometimes also called Caribbean Black Christmas Cake or Caribbean Fruit Cake, are deeply intertwined with Jamaica's colonial history. Therefore, to understand the roots of this iconic dessert, we must delve into the historical context of Jamaica during the colonial period. Although the inspiration for black cake began in Britain, its journey through the African diaspora started in the West Indies. According to the National Museum's Liverpool, slavery in the West Indies started in the 1640s on the twin islands of St. Kitts and Nevis. European settlers discovered early on that sugarcane crops thrived in the lush tropical islands in the Caribbean Sea. The region became a hotspot for plantation owners and settlers looking to capitalize on the growing sugar trade. While the original plantation workers were white indentured servants, European settlers eventually turned to the African slave trade. It was cheaper to import enslaved people, and after 1660, the majority of those working on sugar plantations were African. From being captured and removed from their homelands to surviving the tragedies as they sailed through the Middle Passage from Africa, the crimes committed were heinous and inhumane. From this strife and turmoil, a new culture was beginning to form in the West Indies. Jamaica, like many Caribbean islands, was first inhabited by the indigenous Taino people. However, the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1494 marked the beginning of European influence on the island. While the Spanish were technically the first colonial power to establish a presence in 1510, by the mid-17th century, the British had taken control of Jamaica. The British challenged Spanish rule and successfully took control of Caribbean territories, including Barbados in 1625 and Jamaica in 1655. They then cultivated sugarcane using enslaved African labor up until emancipation in 1834. During these years of British colonial rule, the British colonists added to the Caribbean culture's sweet tooth by introducing the Christmas plum pudding. The new Caribbean people added their twist to the Christmas pudding to make black cake what it is today. In the early 1700s, King George I officially established Christmas pudding as part of the British Christmas meal. British Christmas pudding was seen as a symbol of British imperialism, and all its ingredients were sourced from across the British Empire. For example, spice came from India, currants came from Australia, rum and sugar came from the British West Indies. I dived deep into the origins of British fruitcake in one of my past episodes. I'll put the link in the show notes. During the colonial era of the West Indies, Jamaica became a hub of the transatlantic slave trade, which enslaved Africans forcibly brought to the island to work on sugar plantations. This dark chapter in Jamaica's history had a profound impact on the island's demographic makeup and cultural identity, including its cuisine. Life on a sugar plantation was brutal and cruel. To quell rebellion and release social pressures, plantation owners would hand out potent rations of rum, made from fermenting the sweet juice pressed from sugarcane. On Christmas, New Year's, and Easter, the rum flowed freely and role reversal rituals took place, including the temporary swapping of master and slave. During at least two of these holiday bacchanals, the enslaved laborers decided not to return to their original oppressed roles. The Barbados Slave Revolt of 1816 happened during Easter, and the monumental Jamaican Slave Revolt of 1831 to 1832 started during Christmas. The British introduced the tradition of English plum puddings, which were often soaked in brandy to preserve them on the long sea voyages. But in the Caribbean, the brandy was replaced by the more available rum. The inception of Jamaican Black Cake can be traced back to the fusion of African culinary traditions with European influences. In the 17th and 18th centuries, English fruitcakes were popular in Britain, typically made with dried fruits and nuts and spices. Having experienced this holiday tradition of fruitcakes at the hands of their captors, enslaved Africans took the concept of fruitcake and began adapting the recipe. By incorporating local ingredients and using the rich tapestry of culinary traditions brought with them from home, the enslaved people created a unique Caribbean version of fruitcake. With enslaved Africans being traded and sold across the Americas, it was inevitable that black cake would eventually make its way to the United States. Historians were able to track down a handwritten recipe for black cakes that belonged to American poet Emily Dickinson, an icon in American literature. Dickinson was well known for her baking when she lived in New England. While many in New England associated black cake with Dickinson's superb baking skills, the dessert entered the United States through the triangular slave trade. Fragrant spices like nutmeg, cinnamon, and mace traveled to the U.S. along with enslaved people. These people were transported from Africa through the Caribbean and eventually to the U.S., and black cake came along with them. While Jamaican black cake and traditional fruit cake share a common foundation in dried fruits, nuts, and spices, they diverge in key ways that make the former a unique and celebrated delicacy. Unlike the lighter and often drier texture of traditional fruitcake, Jamaican Black Cake is renowned for its dense, moist, and intensely flavored profile. The secret lies in the meticulous preparation of the fruits, which are soaked for weeks or even months in a potent concoction of dark rum and red wine, infusing the cake with a deep, complex taste. Jamaican Black Cake's distinctive dark hue is owed to the addition of browning, a caramelized sugar mixture made from burnt sugar that is similar to molasses, that contributes to both the color and a distinctive richness. This contrast in texture and appearance reflects the cultural nuances and regional preferences that have shaped the evolution of these two cakes over time. It's a staple of Caribbean cuisine that lends sweetness and depth to both savory dishes like chicken and desserts. In Black Cake, the browning is the star. It gives the cake an almost bittersweet caramel flavor, and that darker, more nuanced flavor is what makes Black Cake so unique. It tastes much more like a really moist chocolate cake as opposed to a fruit cake. We'll find out when to start making your black cake after the break.
What do you like about Christmas? The music, the movies, the traditions, the food, the history, all of the above? Then the Can't Wait for Christmas podcast is for you. Tune in every month to hear a marginally successful stand-up comedian dig into topics like Charlie Brown Christmas, Bing Crosby, Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, Jingle Bells, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, The Christmas Truce of World War I,
Die Hard, Bethlehem, Gift of the Magi, Haunted Mansion Holiday, Andy Williams, Christmas Lights, Nativity Scenes, Nat King Cole, Before Christmas, Toys R Us, Silent Night, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Miracle on 25th Street, 12 Days of Christmas, The Christmas Tree.
Actually, it's going to take way too long to cover all the stuff we've talked about. Just join us at Can't Wait for Christmas Pod on the 25th of every month for the Can't Wait for Christmas podcast, where our motto is, keep laughing all the way.
On the Snow in Southtown Christmas podcast, we discuss Christmas movies, Christmas music, and we have fun segments where we always talk about something weird and something fun related to Christmas on each episode.
If we're tired of making fun of Michael Bublé, I might recommend Pentatonics.
I'm not going to play U2 on this podcast.
Thank you.
He's eating ice cream and crunch taters. He's just partying, man.
Thank God it's them instead of you, right?
I was going to say he was rolling over in his grave, but I don't think he's dead. But
Well, he's still doing it.
when he heard Patti LaBelle, he dug his grave and he rolled in it. How about 10s and 20s?
10s and 20s.
Be sure to check out our website at snowinsouthtown.wordpress.com, where you'll find links to our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Discord.
Yeah, I'd like the tiny tots, please. You mean some small tater tots?
Tis
Yeah,
the
your
season.
tiny tots.
He told him the whole time. They know one beagle. Fire that up.
Speaking my language now.
You can stream our podcast at iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
It's a problematic movie. Yeah, we should pee together at least once per decade, really.
He is now with Snow and Southtown because
He's jingling those bells.
Some
Keep jingling them bells.
Jingle those bells.
Look what you did, you little jerk.
Check out Snow and Southtown.
You won't
You pick.
regret it. And by won't, I mean will.
In the days before refrigeration, alcohol and sugar were two proven ways to preserve a dessert. The traditional English plum pudding was meant to be eaten a full year after it was prepared. The dried fruits and other ingredients preserved by generous amounts of cognac, brandy, sherry, and port. If a plum pudding or other fruit-filled Christmas cake is at risk of drying out during its long incubation period, it is fed with a few more douses of booze to keep it moist. The production of Jamaican Black Cake begins almost a full year in advance. Currants, raisins, cherries, prunes, and the peels of oranges and lemons are soaked in rum and wine for roughly 6 months in airtight jars in order for the fruit to become properly saturated for the cake. Cinnamon, nutmeg, a bay leaf, a tonka bean, kola nut, and other island spices are added to sifted flour to make the cake batter. But what truly makes the black cake is the burnt sugar poured in seconds before the cake goes into the oven, giving the dessert its distinctive, rich, dark color. You can buy bottles of pre-made browning, or you can make it yourself. The recipe is simple, just 2 cups of granulated sugar and a cup of water, but it takes a practiced hand. To make browning, the sugar is cooked in a heavy bottom pot over medium heat until it begins to liquefy and caramelize and take on a dark brown hue. It can get smoky, so turn on the oven fan and open some windows. Right before the sugar turns from brown to black, take the pot off the heat and carefully mix in hot water. I said hot water because cold water will make the sugar harden and you'll just have a lump of hardened black sugar rock. Beyond its remarkable taste, Jamaican Black Cake is steeped in tradition. All components associated with preparing, making, and enjoying the cake are deeply revered. Making a Jamaican Black Cake is a communal affair, often starting months in advance of the anticipated celebration. It's also a family tradition, with recipe variations being methodically taught, thereby ensuring the continuity of this cherished culinary tradition. When it comes to enjoying the cake, the act of slicing it is just as symbolic as making it. In contrast to the act itself, slicing the cake symbolizes unity, community, and kinship, which is why it's common for families to exchange pieces with friends and neighbors to help foster a sense of community and togetherness. For me, black cake symbolizes the spirit of the Caribbean people and islanders, says Letitia Brown, head baker and product innovator for Neil's Sweet and Nice, a Canadian dessert company in Ontario that's proudly Caribbean owned. It's believed that black cake evolved from British colonizers' plum pudding, and we added fruit and spices and of course rum and created something special and unique to us. Despite its problematic history, black cake has been embraced as a symbol of the creativity and resourcefulness of Caribbean people. In Crown Heights, Brooklyn, Unella Roan Perry has a jar of dried fruits soaking in rum and wine. During the weeks before Christmas, she and 8 women in her family meet to assemble 15 to 20 black cakes for loved ones. It's a labor of love, says Perry, who was raised in Jamaica but has lived in Brooklyn for 30 years. It really takes time and patience to make black cake and get it right. Black cake was taught in the home economics class she took in Kingston, Jamaica when she was 16. Perry recalls using soda bottles in her class to mix butter and sugar together since electric mixers weren't available. Every summer she would buy raisins, currants, and prunes in season and start the soaking process. When Christmas arrived, the fruits would plump up, rich with the flavors of Jamaican wine, rum, and cinnamon sticks. Black cake brings back home and childhood, Perry says. I think it really signifies a heritage as to where we are from. The cake varies from island to island. James says her Jamaican friends add rose water to their black cake, where she adds tonka bean, cola nut, and mixed essence, a tropical extract made of almond, pineapple, pear, vanilla, and strawberry. It's this very resourcefulness that makes it so special. Caribbean families have been making their own variations for generations based on what was available, whether in the Caribbean or abroad. It's quite personal for me to remember my mom purchasing a slew of dried fruits, placing them in a jar, and then emptying a bottle of rum in the jar and sealing it off, says Chef Suzanne Barr. It went into the bottom cabinet in our kitchen and would stay there until December rolled around. Then she would start gathering all of the ingredients to make black cake, and the process would begin. It is truly the essence of what I think has everything to do with the Caribbean. Slow cooking. Today, Bar experiments with putting her own spin on her family's black cake recipe, adding spices like star anise and fresh ginger, baking it in a bundt pan, and even adding decorative touches like gold flakes. Well, how do you serve a black cake? Well, you certainly can enjoy it plain, as most Caribbeans do, but Brown likes to serve hers with a generous scoop of sweet and nice rum raisin ice cream. You don't know what real dessert decadence is unless you've tried this pairing. It's the perfect combination of fruit, rummy, warming spice. Bar also has some advice for anyone looking to make one this year. Get started soon, she laughs. No, just think about the intention you want to put into the cake, whether it's for your first time or have a friend that really loves it, or you want to make something special. Then make sure you have a safe place in your home where you can soak the fruit while no one will bother it. Pick dried fruits you love and be patient. Don't peek at it. Let it do its thing. Don't worry about it spoiling. It's got enough sugar preserving it to last a lifetime. Depending on where you are in the Caribbean, black cake may look and taste a little bit different. In Jamaica, black cake may also be called rum cake, given that rum flows freely when creating this dessert. Trinidadians don't use rum as much. Instead, they prefer a good sherry wine and lots of cherries on top. Just like the diversity of the people who created it, black cake can come in many different variations. In Caribbean culture, rum is intimately connected to the rituals of remembrance, and that's what the Christmas season is all about. To receive a black cake is to hold in your hands a very tangible expression of someone's heart and hard work. And while there are other cakes and confections that confer similar sentiment, Jamaican black cake is so affecting that one can easily measure the love one boozy slice at a time. I'm your host, Glenn Warren, and thank you for listening to this serving of Seasons Eatings. Seasons Eatings is available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And please, if you can leave a review about the show so we can spread the Christmas cheer. And if you let me know you've left a review, I'll send you a Seasons Eating sticker as a personal thank you. Also, I would love to hear from you, so send me an email at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com and let me know how you like the show, or suggestions for future episodes, or even just to say hi. I know that we all get busy, so even sharing the podcast with someone who loves Christmas would be a big help. And if you're feeling extra generous this season, you can buy me an eggnog. Head on over to seasonseatingspodcast.com and click on the little cup in the corner. Each small donation helps with the daily running of the podcast and is greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening, and tune in again for another serving of Seasons Eatings. All music for Seasons Eatings is used under the Creative Commons license.